and welcome to another Oblivion Plays Flight Sim video. I've had a few subscribers ask what my various settings are for P3D, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to go through all my simulator, Active Sky Next, Rex Text Direct and config settings. You can click on the text to the left to go to the settings for each piece of software should you only be interested in a few of them. I've included copies of the setting files below should they be available and should you not want to set them manually. So first of all, we've gone into P3D and we're in the settings section. And under the graphics profile, I've got obviously my graphics card set to 1080p. And FXAA I've switched off because it tends to cause quite blurry textures. MSAA is at 8 samples. And texture filtering is at anisotropic 8 times. I've noticed at the moment, I think there's a problem with with the latest NVIDIA drivers, and the anti-aliasing doesn't seem to be working quite as well, but hopefully that'll be sorted soon. Texture resolution is high at 2048 by 2048. Obviously, if you're having VAS issues, you might want to drop it down to one of the lower settings. You could argue that because I'm only at 1080p, there's not really much benefit to going to 2048, but it's better than the 1024 ever so slightly, so that's why I've bumped it up a little bit. VSync is on and triple buffering is on, and I've limited the frames to 30. Although I get better frames with both these off and set it unlimited, the stability is significantly better if I set it there, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about this when I discuss the config settings that I've put in for P3D. Got the wide view aspect ratio set to on, MIPMAP is on, and obviously we don't have any of these 2D transparency settings on, and I've also enabled tessellation. Scenery wise, level of detail radius is to high, tessellation factor is to high, mesh resolution to 1 meters, and texture resolution to 30 centimeters. I'm not at the maximum settings just to save on a bit of VAS, particularly if I'm flying, because I fly in and out of London quite a lot, and if I have it set any higher, then I'm at risk of getting an OOM, even in prepared version 3. And then land detail textures is clicked. Water details is on high, bathymetry is off, and then these are the various reflections that I have set. If you have the water setting to ultra, you'll get the 3D waves, but I don't particularly mind. I think you still get them at high, but they're not quite as detailed as at ultra. But I very rarely pay much attention to that, so that's not an issue for me. Scenery complexities are very dense, and then the autogen settings are at normal. Again, this is just to help with my VAS usage. Special effects detail and distance are both set to high. So we move over to lighting. These are my HDR settings. I find that it's a good compromise between getting that kind of lush HDR effect without it kind of blowing all the colours out and getting weird effects. Dynamic reflections is this new add-on to version 3.1, which makes the sea look absolutely stunning, and you're getting reflections of glass and runways and things at certain airports. Landing lights illuminate ground is set to on, and lens flare is set to on as well. This can be a bit gimmicky for those who don't kind of like that effect, so feel free to turn that off. Shadow qualities to medium. Again, you don't really need high quality shadows, so you may as well improve performance by setting it to medium. And by enabling the terrain to receive shadows, obviously that's a nice effect, particularly when you're kind of getting the clouds reflecting off the ground in your aircraft and various other bits and bobs. And then these are the cast and receive settings. If you go down to vegetation and buildings, you're really going to take a performance hit, particularly if your autogen is quite high. I use Active Sky Next for my weather settings, so these don't really matter all that much, but you can see what I've set here. Traffic settings, again, just to save performance and VAS usage. 10% on airline and general aviation. You can obviously set this up to about 20% without taking a massive hit, but anything above that, you're going to start suffering. I've got my show vehicle labels on at the moment that I tend to switch on and off depending on whether I'm flying, on my Twitch channel, so I can see the other users. But generally speaking, I have that turned off if I'm flying offline or making a recording. Land and sea traffic, 10% for all of them. There's enough road vehicles at 10% to still get that kind of realism, but the performance hit in prepared version 3 is significantly better than an FSX. In FSX, if you bump up the road vehicles, it has a massive effect for some reason. So you can increase that, but I'm quite happy with these settings. In terms of the general settings, obviously this is just down to personal preference, but these are the settings I've got. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. And then if we move over to the sound, these are my sound settings. Again, nothing too interesting here. The only thing I would recommend, not very many people seem to know about this, but if you untick the mute on lost focus, if you're using two monitors, it means if you click onto the other monitor, for example, if you're looking at your flight plan or maps or whatever, it doesn't mute. Mine seems a little bit bugged. When I unticked that, the first time it worked for ages and then suddenly it stopped working again. However, I'm in the process of reinstalling Prepared version 3 because I've had some issues with the NGX and some other add-ons, so hopefully that'll resolve that problem. Flight path wise, obviously I'm not going to enable the visual flight path. Failures, I don't really have any of them set, and then obviously control settings are as you want. Realism, I tend to ignore the crash and damage just because if it obviously detects a crash a few hours into a flight, that's extremely frustrating. But otherwise, these are my other realism settings. So that's the prepared settings. And we'll now move on to my Active Sky settings. Alright, so we're in Active Sky. Go to the Settings tab. And there's a whole list of settings. Generally speaking, the general options are down to what you want. There's nothing really to talk about there. And same for the simulation depiction options. However, once we get to the cloud options, this is where there's probably a little bit of variability. I've set the cloud layers to 3. You set it any higher than 5, you're going to get a massive performance hit. But I find 3, it still looks really nice, and it's a good compromise between visual fidelity and performance. I had it originally set at 5, and to be honest, I don't really notice the difference, and I am getting a little bit better performance and less VAS. Turbulence is set to 100% as recommended, and so is icing. Prevent thunderstorms when CB reported I have unchecked as recommended. The minimum cloud distance is set to 90. Any higher than that, you're actually not going to really notice any difference because that's pretty much the visual range that you have. And then the same with the maximum. Force peak AN to 7/8 is turned on as recommended. And then enhanced overcast conditions is also ticked. However, again, if you're getting really bad performance, this is obviously going to take a bit of a hit because it's kind of increasing the volume of clouds and making it look a little bit better. And I've enabled the P3D low cloud offset because I was having issues that it describes where you get clouds kind of touching the ground, which obviously isn't what you want. So I've set it to the recommended 500 feet offset. I turned off the high detailed thunderstorm clouds because I found when I was flying through storms, the performance hit was just too much for what I was gaining by having that setting ticked. For all the wind options, I have them set as default, so again, there's not a huge amount to talk about there. Visibility options. So I've enabled the wing fade effect. I haven't had any problems with haze in the cockpit, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. And it is quite nice when you have the wing view and you look out and you see the kind of tips disappear if you're going through thick cloud. Minimum surface visibility, obviously, we've set to 0. Should you be in fog, I guess. And then maximum surface visibility. 15 nautical miles, you're not going to see any further than that on the ground, so you may as well save a bit of performance, because basically that's just going to stop you seeing beyond there, and obviously that means it's not having to load in graphics. Maximum upper visibility set to 63, because that's the, again, kind of the maximum that you're going to be able to see anyway. And it adds that kind of nice haze effect when you're looking into the distance. And obviously this is set to true, so the visibility affects, the upper visibility changes according to the atmospheric conditions, that it is limited by your maximum upper visibility that you've set. Audio options, visual fix options, and warning options are all as default. Okay, so welcome to Rex Texture 4 Direct. First of all, go to the main settings page, just so you can see the texture resolutions and stuff that I've set. It's all at 1024, again, just to kind of save a little bit on performance and FPS. In terms of the compressor algorithm, 32 bits, there's some people think that it does look a little bit nicer, but the DXT algorithms are much better on performance, even at the higher resolutions. So it's highly recommended, obviously, that you stick them all on that. And then because I'm using Prepared, you can switch on to the DirectX 11 for the sun, water, and wave animation effects, which is quite nice. And then there's the additional option to enable the version 3 HDR textures, which I've clicked. In terms of the texture install configuration, when you have Rex Texture Direct with soft clouds, it automatically includes them with the low-level clouds, but otherwise everything is ticked. In terms of my my theme, this is what I've currently got set. I have to say the set 26 on soft clouds is absolutely stunning. I was basically having my theme depicted by the weather at whichever airport I was taking off, just so I could kind of see what the different textures were like. And I found this 26 popped up, and it is really nice. It's by far the best one I've used so far. So the rest I don't really mind about. I quite like changing them about every now and again. But I think I'm definitely going to stick with set 26. I've shared the theme in case you guys wanted to have a look at it. It's called Oblivion Plays, surprisingly enough. I'm not sure if that number, how you search for it, but certainly you should be able to find it with that. Maybe with 1001 as well. Okay, so welcome to my config. A bit of a disclaimer. First of all, don't change anything in here if you're not happy with the consequences. Always back up your config before you change it. So if anything goes wrong, you can always revert to the old one. I've put my config file in the description below, so if you want to copy across some stuff that I've added. In terms of the things that I've added, there's quite a few people who argue that you don't actually need to touch the config in Prepared version 3. It already works very well. However, in order to get good performance when I'm limiting the frames, I've had to add a few little bits and bobs. One big recommendation is to overclock your CPU if you can and you know how to do it properly. I've noticed it's really helped my, not necessarily, well, the frames have improved a little bit, but it's also a lot smoother with when you overclock it. So under display settings, obviously these are all according to what I've set in the settings. However, I have added a couple of things. So texture bandwidth multiplier to 160 and the texture max load to 30. This just increases the speed in which Prepared loads up the textures. I'm sure many of you have noticed that some of the textures, particularly if you're in an add-on airport such as Heathrow, the textures remain black for quite a long time. And that just helps to speed up the textures loading in. Another thing I've added in, again, the affinity mask. Some people argue that the affinity mask isn't necessary, but I've found it does just increase the stability and smoothness of the simulator, particularly when you put it on 30 frames per second. So I've set affinity mask to 85, and again, to kind of boost the fact that you get lower frames with a limited FPS to 30, I've added in the fiber frame fraction of 0.01. Now, when I had this on my non-SSD hard drive, as in a bog standard hard drive, I noticed I got really bad blurries with affinity mask at 85. However, since I've had it on the SSD, I've had no problems at all, and the performance is really nice. I'm pretty much constantly locked at 30, and the smoothness is really good. However, you know, when you're getting near Heathrow, you might drop down to about 20 or so. Although I've got higher frames in areas where I've got a few add-ons, when it's set to unlimited, when I have these settings, I definitely get better frames. When say I'm coming out of Heathrow, I mean, when I was coming in with Heathrow with none of these config settings, I was probably getting around about 12 or 13, but with them set, I'm getting about 20, and the visual impact's not compromised in any way. I have disabled preload set, but I was just testing out to see if I could fix a problem I was having with the NGX. But you can certainly delete that. I'm pretty sure it doesn't work with Prepared version 3. It does work with FSX. However, this is a useful one to add in. Always full load. That means when you change scenarios, so you move to a different airport, whatever, it means Prepared will completely dump the memory and reload again, so you don't have any VAS issues. But otherwise, that's all my settings. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do hit the like and share buttons. And if you'd like to watch more, please do subscribe to me on YouTube and perhaps follow me on Twitch as well. I'm open to suggestions, questions and tips, so do add anything in the comments section. And if you'd like to up-to-date information on my streams and videos, then please do follow me on my various social media links, which are in the description below. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.